When I traced where a lot of these central bank gold headlines were really coming from, it was not from the usual retail talking points about inflation and money printing. It was from a much colder, more institutional logic. Reserve managers are looking at a world where access can be conditional, trust can be political, and a reserve asset is only as safe as the legal and geopolitical environment wrapped around it. That is the part most people still do not want to say out loud. Gold buying is not just about inflation anymore. It is about sanctions risk. And if you own gold and you are still reading this market through the old inflation only lens, you are missing the bigger shift. And I am recording this right now from Los Angeles. And I want you to comment what day and date you are watching from, because I always love seeing how far these videos travel, and I want the timeline to be crystal clear, because this story moves fast. And real quick, if you value this kind of straight talk, do me a favor. Subscribe and comment Fin Talk OG so the algorithm knows you want more of this. Now, here is the claim making the rounds. Central banks buy gold when they are worried about inflation. End of story. And on the surface, that sounds fine. It sounds tidy. It also sounds incomplete. Because when you slow it down piece by piece, you realize inflation is part of the story, but not the whole story. The first place these narratives get weak is they ignore the political dimension of reserves. Gold is not just a hedge against purchasing power erosion. It is also an asset with no one else's promise attached. That is the part that matters more in a fractured world. So let us start with what we can verify. Recent central bank survey work shows reserve managers still rank gold's performance in times of crisis, its diversification benefits, and its store of value role as the main reasons for holding it. That alone is important. But look one layer deeper and the picture gets more interesting. Among emerging market and developing country central banks, geopolitical instability and geopolitical diversification show up with more weight than they do in advanced economies. Let me be blunt. That is not an academic nuance. And that is the market telling you that some countries are thinking less like portfolio theorists and more like people who have looked at the global system and decided they want at least part of their rainy day money in something outside another country's liability structure. Here is the clean way to think about it. Gold is not just a hedge, it is a form of reserve sovereignty. If you hold reserves in another country's currency, payment rails, or legal reach, then under normal conditions, that looks fine. Under stress, that can become a question mark. And institutions do not like question marks in their emergency assets. Same asset, different interpretation. To the public, gold can look old fashioned. To reserve managers, it can look like an asset that cannot be sanctioned in the same way a foreign held financial claim can be pressured. And that is why this topic matters. It shifts gold from being a macro opinion to being a strategic insurance policy. Now, here is the skeptical alternative. Could people be overstating the sanctions angle? Sure. Not every gold purchase is a sanctions trade. Not every reserve manager is suddenly re engineering the system around geopolitics. And I am going to say something that might annoy both sides. The extreme de dollarization crowd exaggerates the speed. The old school inflation only crowd understates the motive. The real world is messier. Countries are not abandoning existing reserve structures overnight. They are adjusting around the edges. Pressure valves, not trapdoors. But those edge adjustments matter because once enough central banks decide gold deserves a bigger seat at the table for strategic reasons, you get a different kind of demand floor in the market. Stay with me on this because it matters. If your reserve asset can be frozen, restricted, politicized, or made conditional in a crisis, then that asset is not neutral in the way many central banks once assumed. Gold is not perfect. It does not yield much in the traditional sense. It costs money to store. It can be politically awkward to explain to people who still think reserves should only be about liquid paper and tidy spreadsheets. But in a world where access risk matters more than it used to, gold's lack of counterparty dependency starts looking like a feature, not a bug. Here's what nobody wants to say. Regular investors are often told gold is a fear trade, while institutions quietly treat it like strategic infrastructure for the balance sheet. That disconnect is huge. It means the public narrative is still lagging what official money is doing. And when the public narrative lags official behavior, opportunity usually lives in that gap. So, what does this actually mean for you? It means stop listening to gold commentary that treats inflation as the only lens that matters. If you want to understand why central banks keep buying, ask what kind of world they think they are preparing for. Not a world of tidy growth assumptions and smooth trade flows. A world where crisis performance, diversification, and access risk all matter at once. Here's a question for you. Do you think gold's biggest value right now is inflation protection or political neutrality? Drop that in the comments because I read them. Now, here is a simple action plan. No drama. Step 1. Define why you own gold. But if it is only an inflation bet, your conviction may disappear the first time inflation data cools and gold stays firm anyway. If it is strategic insurance, you will understand the asset differently. Step 2. Watch the language coming from central banks. Not just the quantity of buying, the reasoning, crisis, diversification, store of value, geopolitical risk. Those are tells. Step 3. If you want to express this through equities, remember that central bank logic is better for the metal itself than for every miner equally. Miners still bring operational risk, cost inflation, and jurisdiction risk into the picture. Step 4. Keep it sane. Gold does not need leverage to be exciting. The macro backdrop will provide enough drama on its own. Now let us map two plausible paths without pretending we can predict the exact candle. Well, path 1 is the slow normalization path. In this world, more countries quietly increase gold allocations, not because they are announcing a new monetary order, but because they want a little more reserve autonomy in a less trustworthy world. Gold keeps gaining strategic relevance one small decision at a time. Path 2 is the shock acceleration path. In this world, another geopolitical rupture or financial fracture suddenly makes the sanctions risk logic obvious to everyone at once. Then, official buying that looks steady starts looking urgent. I am not predicting it. I am saying it is within the set of things this market is capable of doing. Now, here is the uncomfortable truth. Institutions do not need to tell you the full truth in advance. They just need to position before the truth becomes obvious. And regular investors usually hear about these changes only after the portfolio shift is already underway. That is why a defensive strategy matters, not because panic is guaranteed, because if you are not prepared for the version of the world reserve managers are clearly preparing for, you will read gold the wrong way and probably size it the wrong way too. 1. Decide your maximum allocation first. Write it down. If you are losing sleep, you are too big. 2. When something runs hard and you are up a lot, take some off. Not all some. If your position doubles, consider trimming half. Lock in the original bet. Let the rest run. 3. Do not use leverage or confuse narrative with mechanism, or keep all of one thing in one place, depending on the topic. 4. The best time to buy is not always when you are most excited. The best time to buy is when you can still breathe. So here is what we covered. Gold buying is no longer just about inflation. It is also about sanctions risk, access risk, and reserve sovereignty. Central banks are telling you in their own language that crisis performance, diversification, and strategic resilience matter. And in a world where trust is more conditional than it used to be, gold's lack of counterparty dependence is becoming more valuable, not less. The mechanism is doing something that most people do not see or will not understand until it is too late. Stay alert, stay thoughtful, and do not let old inflation only narratives talk you out of seeing why official money still wants this metal. Now, here are my questions for you. Do you think sanctions risk is now a bigger driver of central bank gold buying than inflation? And if you own gold, are you holding it as a macro trade or as strategic insurance? Drop your answer below and remember to include what day and date you are watching from. If you got value out of this, subscribe and comment FinTalk OG so I know you want to follow up on central banks, reserve diversification, or how to position if geopolitical risk keeps feeding official gold demand. All right, keep your head clear, and I will talk to you soon. And just so we are crystal clear, this is educational content. It is my take based on publicly discussed information and my own reasoning, and it is not personal financial advice. I am not your advisor. I do not know your goals or your risk tolerance, and I could be wrong. Do your own homework. Consider your situation. And if you need personal advice, get it from a qualified professional who knows your situation.